Today on the Fairy BOSSmother Show. Hello, we're talking to an expert right here. I met with Jess Jensen, a marketing strategist who's worked with giants like Adidas and Microsoft. No one can ignore, a candidate who says, I've worked for Adidas and Microsoft and Nestle before social media was even a thing. Jess thinks that she's helping C-suite executives and small business owners at the same time.
They both are in leadership positions. They both stand to gain from having a public presence, specifically online.
But what she doesn't see is that her positioning is stuck between two worlds. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Right, let's put you back on the map in your company and remind people who the hell is leading this big ship. She has the pedigree of a global strategist, but she's marketing herself like a freelancer. You're opening up a little crack in the window, just a little, and then you're closing it again, because that's all people need to see. And I take a woman who has built global brands and finally treat herself like one. The way you can step out of the US is by stepping with your company.
Yeah. I need to hire you as my publicist.
Let's meet Jess Jensen. Now, before we meet Jess, I asked her a few basic information about herself so I can see how she talks about her brand and her business. Let's take a look. When I asked her, what is your business all about and who do you serve? Jess said, I partner up with executive and ambitious founders to cut through the digital noise with clear, authentic messaging, focusing on platforms like social media and podcasts. My number one goal is to sharpen and elevate a leader's professional brand before they need one. All right, already I'm thinking, wait, who do you serve? Because she mentioned executives and ambitious founders. That's two very different audiences, because if she's talking about executives, meaning the head of a company, they already have a marketing and communications team in hand. Small business owners, they're going to be the one that's scrambling. So who does she want to help the most? That's what I'm going to be asking her in this podcast. When I asked her, what are your main goals for your business right now? She simply said, grow revenue by the end of the year by 30%. This is by building a diversity of income streams and generate a threshold of cash flow that allows me to give up my time pro bono to other female founders from low social economic backgrounds. I love that. Jess has such a big heart. She wants to give back without these individuals paying her. So she definitely is very community oriented. She's philanthropic by nature, but my concern here is that she's focusing a lot of this information on money. How is her brand going to get her to that money? And it's not just about sales, it's about the weight behind her name. Now, I get the feeling right now, Jess doesn't have that. Now, when I asked her, what is your biggest challenge you're currently facing in reaching those goals? Jess said, I have just been in business since September 2024. So I'm still establishing systems, growing brand awareness, and building a business development muscle. Bingo, that's probably why she's fighting against who she should be serving, how to grow her business, how to scale, how to make it sustainable, how to not work deeply in her business and still have time for all the other things that she wants to do. She doesn't have an infrastructure, and that brand is definitely missing. So I'm going to ask a lot about that in this episode. Last but not least, I asked her, have you done any work on your personal brand? And Jess said, yes, I have a website. I'm very active on LinkedIn and launched an email newsletter. I also guest star on podcasts and YouTube channels. Next up will be Instagram or Blue Sky. Okay, so she's talking about marketing strategies, which is definitely her forte. But when it comes to building a personal brand, I doubt she's done any work on herself as a brand with the name Jess Jensen. Now, having said that, let's meet Jess Jensen. Jess, welcome to the Fairy BOSSmother Show. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
Tell us, where are you calling from today?
Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Nice. Well, Jess, welcome to the Fairy BOSSmother Show. Do you want boss mode, which means the gloves are going to come off and think it's going to get deep and dirty, or do you want the gloves on and I go slightly softer on you today?
Oh, let's do it. Give me your best shot.
All right, let's go. Gloves are coming off, everyone. Jess, you have asked for hard mode on the Fairy BOSSmother Show. Let's start off easy. Tell us in the most best elevator pitch, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm the founder of Copilot Communications, which is an advisory that works with C-suite executives and other founders to build out their digital platform. So a lot of the time we spend energy on places like LinkedIn, podcasting, other digital spaces that are important to them, but it's really bringing their voice forward. That's bigger than just their company, but actually rooted in their values. And we build a narrative platform together that really feels like them authentically. So that work really started when I was inside of corporate roles, most recently at Qualcomm, where I kind of realized a lot of my background in brand marketing, social media, and digital comms. I was more and more excited about working one-on-one with leaders in that fashion, transitioning away from kind of the larger campaign work I'd done historically. So I thought, if I can do this in-house, maybe this practice is something that I could bring to the outside world. So that's what Copilot.
Okay, so there's a lot of talk about them. Who exactly is them? Because you want to transition into working on big campaigns for a corporation to working one-on-one with these individuals. So who are they?
Yeah. So again, it's C-suite. So I would say anywhere from like an SVP to a CEO. It can also be a founder, so a small business owner. They're sort of the two target audiences. They have a lot of similarity and crossover, but there are some key differences, right? A founder is obviously looking to attract clients and customers, and they may have way smaller internal resources to support them from a communication standpoint. Whereas someone who's a CMO or a chief revenue officer, they often have a comms team. They often have social media folks behind them. They might just not have someone who's dedicated to really partnering with them as a strategist. So those are the two audiences I work with.
It's two very different audiences though, right?
Well, again, there's similarities, right?
Okay, let's talk about the similarities then.
Yeah, I mean, they're both leaders, right? One is a leader in a corporate setting and probably looks after a team, again, within a corporation. The other is a leader of a company. And so they probably also have employees, but it's one that they've built or acquired. So they both are in leadership positions. They both stand to gain from having a public presence, specifically online. So to be known is in service of the growth of their company, whether it's one that they own or one that they work for.
There's two glaringly big difference between the corporate leaders and the founders and entrepreneurs. The founders and entrepreneurs typically don't have the budget in place unless they acquire that budget, grants, loan, all of that, bootstrapping. And then the C-suite leaders that you mentioned, they don't have to worry about the budget as much because they're not getting that money themselves. It's something that the corporation has given to them as part of their budget in that department, and they have to spend it by the end of the year, right? So for me, it's two different target audiences. Either you're going after the founders and entrepreneurs, they will have the passion in wanting to build that presence. The C-suite leaders, not so much. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you're right about budget. Often the corporate executive has a corporate budget and they can allocate that in different ways. And often they have a lot of authority over how that's spent. The founder, again, it depends on founder can mean a lot of things. It can be a solopreneur. Or it can be someone that has 150 people working for them,
right?
Or on up, thousands, right? So it just depends on what size and what stage their company is at. But yes, it's their money ultimately that's being spent. So that's one of the reasons over the last year and a half that I've had the company, I've developed a little bit of a tiering strategy in terms of how I offer my services. Like at the C-suite level, it's a much deeper engagement and we spend weeks and months together. And then often there's an ongoing retainer kind of relationship as well. Whereas at the kind of, again, solopreneur, certainly, and even like founder with a few employees, that's a smaller situation. That might be a little bit more of a couple sessions that we do. And then they kind of go on their merry way. And I'm here if they need me down the road.
It sounds like communication therapy. What you're describing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
triage this.
Yeah, well, when you get into building a narrative platform for somebody, you're asking a lot of questions about value system, how they treat others as a leader. You're asking about what the priorities are, what the legacy is they want to leave. So you quickly do get into sort of the psychology of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you know what, Jess? I want to learn a little bit more about you outside of your clients. I want to know, what was your life like before you decided, you know what? I want to start my own company. This is it.
Yeah. So I spent 20 years inside of large companies. I was early on at Nestle, so kind of consumer packaged goods world, where I had my first exposure to managing a P&L and really having to look over a business in its entirety, not just the marketing aspects of it. And then I went to work for Adidas, so footwear and apparel, kind of in that lifestyle sports industry. And that was really where digital beyond like web and email started to rise. So Adidas offered me this really lovely chapter. I was kind of just the right age and stage in my career when social was really opening up to the world. So I did a lot of experimentation, and I was able to kind of learn, almost like the era that we're in right now with AI. I was learning on the job and figuring it out for the company, and that set the stage for me to then get into the tech industry. And so I went on from Adidas to Microsoft, where I led social for Windows, the Windows division. And then my last kind of chapter in corporate America was my longest, which was a decade at Qualcomm. Qualcomm is a semiconductor company. We design chips out of San Diego. And that was a really interesting, I mean, it was a set of roles, right? Because after a decade, but you change what you do. You're not stagnant, certainly, but B2B, right? How do you use social and influencer and podcasting and video and all those digital tools in a way that is compelling in a more B2B fashion, which historically has been like a latecomer to those spaces.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, that's so much rich experience. You've named some of the biggest companies that is known not nationally, but internationally, worldwide. You know, Adidas, you mentioned Microsoft, you mentioned Nestle. Right. Are you using those names to your advantage when you're pitching to your future clients?
I do. Yeah. It's on my website. It's in my LinkedIn. I try to be judicious I certainly don't want to come across as if I know everything. I still, of course, always have a lot to learn, but I have, worked inside some pretty notable brands, and you learn a tremendous amount in those environment. So I do talk about it in my bio, and often it's like in, intros for podcasts and so forth, just to give a little historical context to my experience.
Yeah. So what are your biggest goals for your business at the moment, Jess, and for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, so the whole entrepreneurial journey is as you can understand from my background, is really new.
Yeah.
It's something I think I always knew I was going to do. I sort of wanted to set myself up. Again, in my mind, I always thought maybe in my 50s, I'll do something like that where I can start to create a lifestyle and a schedule that I have a little bit more flexibility and a little more control over. So I'm not in my 50s yet. So I've done this earlier than I expected, but I'm actually really grateful that I'm doing it when I'm doing it. Again, I mentioned AI earlier. I feel like we're in this really fascinating era right now with what's exploding.
Mm-hmm.
Able to really, again, experiment and be an early adopter and figure out how to build a business, leveraging a lot of these AI tools that we have at our fingertips that literally 3 years ago were not as easy to access.
Right.
So goal would be to grow the business to the point where I have some help. Right now it's me, and I can feel already the pressure is building. Yeah. Which is a good pressure. I mean, I'm happy to have, business where I'm already thinking about what it would look like to have a team, and, eventually be able to hire people that can do what I do, so that I'm more of a counselor and sort of advisor, and they're out in front as well. Yeah. And then eventually we'll see what happens. Maybe it gets acquired. Maybe it grows to a size where, again, I'm more of a consultant role 10 years down the road. But I think it's something that it's always been in me to be a builder and to be a creator. I just happened to grow up inside of these large companies and didn't always have the forum to do that like I do now.
So what made you decide, Jess, that you're now ready to be on the Fairy BOSSmother Show?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do a lot of podcasts, so I love just meeting new people and having good conversations about the company and learning about yours. And I also am always a believer that feedback is a gift, especially obviously if it comes from a place of goodness and wanting to be better. So certainly love your fresh eyes. If you see things that you feel like could be written better or confusing or what have you on my digital properties, then I always want to improve and get better.
Okay, awesome. Jess, you mentioned lifestyle. What does your ideal lifestyle look like that you currently don't have right now?
Well, I mean, this doesn't have too much to do with work, but I mean, I would love to have, when my kids are out of the house, which is we still have young kids, I would love to be able to live in multiple places around the world and have access to different geographies at different times of the year. As we were talking about before the call, it gets chilly in Portland in the winter as well. And I don't love the cold. So that's part of like my sort of secret, maybe tertiary motivation to build something on my own so that I can kind of live where I want to live, when I want to live there.
Yeah. So what's stopping you from getting to that dream right now?
Well, I have kids in school.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a move. You can't really be a snowbird when you've got kids in school.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what your $1 million lifestyle looks like. right? I just want to get inside your head a little bit, Jess, because there's a lot of corporate speech, and I'm gonna pounce that out of you right now. Even though you're working with you or you want to work with other corporations, clearly you've come from a deeply corporate background. You know, there's rules and regulations, there's brand guidelines that you need to follow, there's structures that you have to meet. There's not a lot of room to be able to go outside of the box unless you start working for yourself, which is exactly what you're doing right now. So you have the freedom and that flexibility to build that empire the way you want to, not the way Microsoft wants you to, right? So let's assume, right, you don't need to worry about money. You've got $1 million in the bank, right? Money is not a problem for you. Time is also not an issue for you because you've got the money to be able to hire other mini Jess who can do this type of work. And now it's not this is my company, it's my company and my team's responsibility now. What are you doing with your life right now?
Yeah. So kind of painting a picture of what it could look like in the future when those things are true. Yeah. I mean, certainly if money was no object and I had a team to support some of the tasks that, eat up my time.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I would love to be able to not work a 10-hour day, right? And be able to kind of work with clients that I really enjoy, which is already happening, which is, again, one of the beautiful parts about this business is you can kind of choose who you work with.
Yeah.
Be in that one-on-one sort of advisory and one-on-one relationship role with them.
Okay.
But allow some of the kind of operational sides of the business to be taken care of by others and be able to, again, maybe work like 4 or 5 hours a day and then go to the beach, right?
Because in reality, who wants to work? Like, we're not made to work the way we are working right now. So the $1 million question for you, Jess, is what do you want to be known for? When people look you up, Jess, Jensen, there you are. What is that?
Yeah, it's funny. I ask that question a lot of my clients, and it's a very existential question. I want to be known for helping, again, the name Copilot is on purpose.
Okay.
Helping to partner with people who have influence and have a platform to put positivity out into the world.
Okay.
There's, again, I've spent most of my career in social, and there's a lot that's changed. I think we all know this very well. A lot that's changed in those spaces over the last decade. And I mean, I'm a teeny tiny part of that. Obviously, millions of people contributed to it, but I have spent a career kind of just adding to the what is today platforms that have, I think, shifted in terms of what they're doing to society.
Yeah.
And maybe how they're eroding relationships. And I don't love that. I don't love that. I try to keep good boundaries myself and obviously hope that my friends and my family can as well. But I think we all see what's happening to at least the US, but I mean, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
So I guess from my perspective, if there's a legacy I could leave out of my little corner of the world, it's that if I could help, a dozen, 2 dozen, what have you, maybe someday it's 100 leaders who truly want to put thoughtful, creative, supportive content out into the world, then it's maybe we're shifting that weight just a little bit of what unfortunately has become kind of a toxic and negative environment for a lot of people to sort of wade through.
Okay, so let's talk about corporations like we are talking to the people inside the corporations, because I think when a lot of people talk about corporations, we think about these massive corporations completely faceless, and because it's faceless with a big logo on it, it's hard for us to put some emotions behind the work that we do, and the impact behind the actions that you're taking. And as a result, language becomes very fluffy, very vague, very generic. And I feel like that's the danger that you're in right now. I'm not hearing the emotions behind your words, because we're talking about this big corporation, a corporation that can make a massive impact, a massive positive impact into the world, right? So I want you to think about an example that you have. You don't have to name names with the people that you've worked with. Just make it quite general. But I want to hear a little bit of an example of when a company has made that positive impact through some of the input and the work you've done. Like, what was the Jensen method in order to get this corporation from here to here, even if it was like a tiny needle?
Well, I mean, I think that the work that I did at Qualcomm the last 4 or 5 years, there was a lot, I mean, it wasn't just me, but there was a lot of us that understood, in an engineering-led culture, which many, many tech companies are, including Qualcomm, you have a large population of people that are highly technical and they have a whole language unto themselves. And so it's been communicators' jobs, marketer and communicators' jobs to help translate a lot of that to sort of layman speak, where like a broad Gen Pop audience can make some sense of it. So that was kind of already happening again at a company-wide level.
Yeah.
But I think when you start to work with the individual leaders, you have more levers to pull. Because to your point earlier, and again, it's what I preach to my clients, like people don't want to follow brands, they want to follow people.
Right.
And so if we can augment what we do from a brand standpoint, which is all good, with these individual, 3, 4, 5 leaders, it's easier to sort of peel back a little bit more of their personality, their humanity, what they do outside of work, I'm really into karate, or I love fly fishing with my son, or I'm a believer in servant leadership. What does that mean? Let's talk about what that actually looks like when you manage your team. So I think that I was able to shift the dial with our leaders at Qualcomm before I left around giving them permission to show more of their full selves. And not just sort of PR, kind of the brand corporate lines, which is sort of what I think it's what people default into when they don't know any better.
Right. It definitely sounds like you're turning these leaders into magnetic personal brands within the company themselves, right? Because you're humanizing that individual. The CEO, you know the name, but you don't know anything about them. And that could be deliberate. But there's also ways where you can help control their narrative as the CEO and not go too personal. It's just almost like you're spoon feeding the audience about, like you mentioned, fly fishing. That's a very niche thing. But there'll be people who says, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know about this side to them. And it makes them more relatable. The other thing you mentioned was you look at the overall arching communications of that corporation and how to translate all the big things that they're doing so it filters down to the right people. So that strategic communication element of the work that you're doing is huge for corporations, because even if they have a dedicated marketing department, which they will because they're a big company, they still need an outside perspective to be able to say, look, here are some opportunities that you have within your company that you're not actually utilizing. Now, if you were to, for example, get into podcasting, and this is coming directly from the director of communications within that company, you're able to do outreach here. Here are all of the different ways that you can target this very simple message into all of these different streams. I'm seeing you do that type of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's well said. I think there's a lot of interest that we all, it's the whole, like, you go back to like Us Weekly back in like the early 2000s, sort of like those first few pages of like showing, celebrities pumping their own gas, right? Or like walking their kid through the farmer's market. All have that interest in like, what do they do when they're not perfect? What's their day-to-day? And certainly we've had that interest in celebrities for decades, but I think more as corporate leaders, and again, founders too, have become almost their own version of a celebrity, a mini celebrity. The customers, clients, future employees, they're all interested in like, well, what do you do when you're not just in front of a microphone or on a keynote stage? Like, tell me more about who you are. And that's gonna, to your point, humanize them, but it cascades to the brand. And again, this dovetails into the founder conversation, because if you're a founder, especially if you're on your own, let alone if you've got just a small company behind you, like, in many ways, what you're selling is you.
Yeah.
So if you don't get out in front and really build a personality and you stand for certain things, then it's a commodity game. Now you're just one of thousands of other people that sell whatever your service is. Why am I going to buy from you versus somebody else?
So you know what, Jess? Everything that you're saying just is screaming at me with who your target audience is. Do you want me to? Are you curious to know what that is?
Yes, please share.
I feel like you'd be brilliant at working with founders of large companies. And I'm not even talking about the solopreneurs and the startup companies. These are companies who already have like 50 to 100 employees, and they have maybe they have franchises, or they have multiple offices in different states and countries, because they started this baby. The baby got big very, very quickly. Now they're not really managing the project themselves. They're managing all of these people, right? It's become a people, they're very much a glorified HR rep now, right? But they are the leader of this company. They are the captain of this ship. And the direction is very much, right, I need to protect my company. I'm going to use, let's use Microsoft just as an example, even though it's not true, right? Let's assume you're working with the founder of Microsoft and that's it. Like, I am Microsoft now, which is not true because there's a person behind that brand, but that brand is just so big. That brand has swallowed up that founder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel like, Jess, you would be perfect in like, right, you know what? I'm gonna rescue you right now. I'm gonna get rid of all of this noise and all of this like paperwork and responsibilities. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Right. Let's put you back on the map in your company and remind people who the hell is leading this big ship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Well, and I think you combine that with the fact that certainly my generation and certainly your generation, we aren't staying at companies for 20 years. Like
exactly. Yeah.
And that was the case. I know that once was the case back in the day. And there are exceptions. There's always exceptions of some folks that stay for 15, 20 years. But, vast majority, 80-90% of people, right, we're jumping from one company to the next every 5 or 10 years. And so if you think about 5 or 10 years, your career is maybe 40 years long. You have to own your brand because you are not your company.
No. So you have to be able to add layers to now your personal brand, right? Mm-hmm. And even as the founder of this company, you don't know what's going to happen with them in that company. Because like you said, they may lose interest or they may have another opportunity or they may sell or they may decide, you know what, I want to become a speaker or I want to like host a TV show, or I want to do something completely different outside of the scope of this company that I built. Yeah. Jess, help them out. Help this person out in order to build that up because they've got the foundation for a really successful brand outside of their company, right? And then what you do, not only are you building up the personal brands of these big CEOs, but you're also ensuring that they have some sort of exit strategy if they wanted to leave the company, because you're also handling the communications team internally within the business so that everything that the CEO is doing is boosting up what the company is doing overall. So it's like you can't have one or the other because you're working with a corporation. It's like, here's an egg. It's cracked right now. Jess, you're fixing it together.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think there was a time when, again, this maybe goes back 5 or 10 years, but there was a time when I think that a comms team inside of a larger company, communications team, might worry, well, gosh, if we invest dollars to stand up the XO, whoever it is, CEO, fill in the blank. Well, aren't we just effectively helping them? We're positioning them for their next role. How does that help?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
There's like a little bit of a fear of like, let's not make them too visible because that could threat, right? Then they're going to go get poached. And I get that. I understand that fear. But I actually think that when you look at like the on balance, the threat of that happening is much lower than the benefit that that company gets from, again, brand work is still forging ahead. That train hasn't left the tracks, right? There's still corporate branding happening, of course.
Yeah.
But you have on top of that, you augment it with these individual personalities that you're standing up that are also in service of building that brand while they're there, at least. And that is a step change in terms of that company really feeling approachable, personal. I'm rooting for them because there's actual humans that I see out in front.
Yeah. And also the other thing is when you're building up one person or multiple people, let's say you're working with the entire exec team, right? You're working with all of the directors and boosting up all of their personal brands individually. As a unit, you've just increased not only the profitability of that company, but also how much they are worth as a company with these people inside it, right? And if they get replaced, guess what? It's a copy and paste. It's now something the corporation leads with now. We will boost up and we're going to boost your visibility within your current role, because with your visibility, that increases profitability and sales and the work that we do as a company, because there's more eyes on us now. And now there's not just one person representing the company, there's multiple ambassadors within that company, but this is part of the job now. It's not just to be behind a desk telling people what to do. It's a 21st century way of doing business now. Because like you said, you've got AI. There's a lot of things that AI can do that humans can also do. There's that danger. So when you're amplifying on that personality and you're putting a lens on exactly who is running this company, it will benefit the corporations.
Absolutely. And you said it so well. I mean, if you can stand up this practice, even if worst case scenario, all of your C-suite for whatever reason moves on to other things, which is unlikely to happen. But let's just say you have some shuffling of leadership. Well, now the company has this practice. They've built this muscle around executive communications. And so now when the new people come in, like you said, that's just part of the job. This is one of your responsibilities. And we've got a whole system to help stand you up as an individual leader on behalf of the larger good.
And Copilot, run by Jess, builds this for you. You don't have to build this yourself. You don't have to figure out what the nuts and bolts is in order for you to install this system. Jess, you need to start owning what this system is. Whether it's the Copilot system or the Jensen Copilot, I don't know. We need to put your name behind this, because when you are the author of this system and you can use, your years and decades of experience with these multinational companies, that boosts up your credibility immediately, right? No one can ignore, a candidate who says, I've worked for Adidas and Microsoft and Nestle. That's huge, right? Those are three of the biggest names in the world. You have a Copilot system where you're doing boom, boom, boom for founders and C-suite level executives. And the only thing they have to do is hire you to be able to install this system so that it becomes a muscle in their company. And that's a no-brainer right now.
Yeah, I need to hire you as my publicist.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
All right. You're right. You're right. It's the system. There's value in the individual work I do. And then there's value also in having a bit of a rubric or sort of an approach that you can I don't mean plug and play. There's always nuance, but you can repeat it in different company settings and just adjust it slightly for the personalities that you're working with.
Well, really, essentially what you're doing, Jess, is building up that system. The system is set, but what happens within it is really fluid. Mm-hmm. And the only person who can do this is you, right? Even as the founder of your own company, Jess, this system, whether you decided, I want to move to Thailand and my kids are fine, this is a system still built by you, even if it's implemented by other members of your team. That doesn't matter, right? So right now you're leading with something like, look, I've got all of this experience. This is a system and methodology that I used in previous companies, because that's where it came from. This idea didn't just come because it didn't come out of thin air. You saw a problem in these corporations. You decided, right, this is not working the way you should. There's so much negativity and these companies are not leading the way they should. And these executives could be doing a little bit more, just by humanizing 10%. You're not telling them to share their lunch and everything they've eaten on TikTok. That's not what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're opening up a little crack in the window, just a little, and then you're closing it again, because that's all people need to see.
Yeah.
That system is installed by you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's especially relevant in the tech industry, which is where I've spent the last 13 years. Because like I mentioned earlier, so much of the tech industry is run by a very technical engineering-led personality. And I think there's almost like a naivete, like a little bit of an innocence around, not everyone understands what you're talking about. So we have to figure out a way to translate and kind of chameleon this goodness that you're building that you understand so deeply, but that 95% of the people out there need a version of it that is more about what's in it for them.
Right. And it's always going to be what's in it for them. Is this a distraction, or is this going to make my company into $1 billion company? That's where the head's going to go. It's going to be money and time, money and time. Are you saving them money, or are you boosting their revenue and the forecasting with what you're doing? Are you also saving them time with the system that you're building? Because the answer is yes and yes. You're saving them years of trial and error. And you also mentioned in today's age, communications is like this. It's like, oh, well, this AI is the hottest thing. Tomorrow it could be something else. And these executives are just kind of going, you know what, I'm going to pass this on to the comms team, because this is not my problem. It is, but they don't know how to figure things, they don't know how to figure this out. It's a problem. And because of the world that you're in, Jess, because you're in the world of communications, you will know what is right for that company. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. I think it is changing so rapidly, and it is hard to keep up. And you said it well earlier. I think there are still a lot of leaders that don't believe that communications is actually a part of their job. And it absolutely is. In fact, I think it becomes a greater and greater percentage of your role as you rise up, because you're not doing most of the day-to-day work anyway, but you're having to stitch together a team and then repeatedly tell the world, whether it's internal or external, what that team is accomplishing, where their challenges are, where they're up, all the things. You have to be able to communicate it out.
Right.
So it's a skill set that, unfortunately, again, in the tech industry especially, I don't think every leader is steeped in that. And I think it's getting better, but there's still a lot of white space.
It's baby pace. Like,
Yeah,
come on. You're just saying, look, don't take another 20 years to figure this out. I'm going to pull you into the 21st century right now.
Absolutely.
Today. Right. So based on everything that we shared so far, do you feel like, number one, when I talked about who Jess is and the problem that Jess provides for these individuals, how did that make you feel when I reflected it back to you?
Oh, great. I mean, I feel like you understood it. I feel like you were able to articulate it. I love what you said about the idea of it's not just sort of the one-on-one work. It's actually bringing a system to bear that can rapidly improve how a company communicates. So yeah, it feels good.
Yeah. But do you feel like everything that we discussed, Jess, is it reflective of your branding right now? If I was to look on your website and your social medias.
Right. So I think that the one-on-one work is, I think, like my philosophy and my experience, certainly, but I don't think the idea of building the infrastructure and sort of the systems is reflected.
All right. Well, Jess, we're halfway through the show. Do you want me to go steady or do you want to go deeper?
No, let's go deeper.
Let's go deeper. All right, girl. Well, I am really, really curious to know how you write about yourself and your business. So I'm going to check out your website.
Let's do it.
So before I do that, are you nervous? Are you scared?
No, I'm excited. I mean, I want to hear what you have to say. I'm sure there are things I can do better. It's like it's the classic, like the very work that you have expertise in, you give so much to your clients.
Yeah.
That then like your own version of it is kind of the last thing that you touch. So yeah, I'd love fresh eyes.
All right, let's tighten up this $1 million brand for Jess. Okay, Jess. Awesome. So we are now on copilotcommunications.com, which is the name of your company. Right. Immediately, Jess, I see the colors, right? And I see the logo. The logo is really interesting. Can you talk to me about this logo? Because it looks like a little propeller.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. So I love the word Copilot, and I know that there are lots of other companies that use that. I did do quite a bit of thinking about it, but I like the alliteration of the C and the C, Copilot and communications, number one. And then I really do see myself as a Copilot to my clients, and I like that role. I'm happy to be in that role as kind of an advisor and maybe a behind the scenes consultant. And so I thought I've always sort of loved mid-century modern kind of design. And so I looked at aviation, illustration, and design from like the 50s and 60s. And so that logo is inspired by mid-century aviation art.
Nice. So just by looking at the image, right now, it does feel very corporate to me. I'm thinking, okay, this feels like a really, really big company, just another big company helping another big company out. And I'm not feeling what does Copilot actually do, right?
The image behind it.
Yeah, the image behind it. It just feels really sterile to me because it's just a city. So I know it can land in any industry, and it definitely feels like you're not really talking to a human. You are definitely talking to a corporation. But we have to remember there's people who are running that company behind the scenes. So the way you come across, it needs to be very heart to heart. You are talking to an individual. You are here to fix a very specific problem. I want to see what that problem is and how you fix it, like boom, right on the homepage.
Yeah. Good call. Yeah, that's a picture of Portland, but honestly, that's just where I live. So it isn't maybe relevant image for what the services are that I sell.
Right. Because with the work that you do, Jess, you can work anywhere in the world and be remote and still be able to provide this high level advisory, like strategic communications work.
Yeah. Good point.
Right. All right. Let's keep going. So yay, finally, there's a picture of Jess. Well done. Because that's really rare. So you talk about how this is a female-owned advisory, yes, based in Oregon, and we partner with C-suite senior executives and ambitious founders. Cut through the digital noise. Right. For me, this is too much words. I still don't know what you do. Like, what the hell is Copilot? Who do you help, and specifically what problem?
Yeah. Does it help? So if you keep reading through the paragraph, editorial planning, digital strategy, social, and podcast, does that start to clarify what I do?
Not really, because I don't know how I can translate any of that to my company, right? So imagine I am looking for someone like you. And right now, I don't know how you can help me as the founder of this company.
So verbalize it and more again of what's in it for, what problem am I going to solve for you?
Right. Jess, I've written something very, very quickly. And this is just like, while you were talking, I've written, I am the co-pilot to your communications and visibility infrastructure to the company you founded.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're using I instead of we. And I know in corporate speak, there's a lot of we, but own the fact that this is your company, right? I want you to own that now instead of saying we, even if it's, I know there's a lot of misconception about, well, if I say we, it's going to sound like I'm a solopreneur and blah, 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 blah. Well, you can say my team and I as well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think maybe making it a little bit more about what's in it for them, what problem I'm going to solve, and making it a little bit more personal.
Yeah, definitely. Because at the end of the day, when you mention C-suite, you know what? A lot of these executives, they probably forget they are a C-suite executive, right? Right? This is marketing speak now. We don't want to talk marketing to them because they do not understand marketing. They are hired for a very specific job, and you're making the work that they do easier for them with your Copilot system.
Yeah.
Right? With you co-piloting beside them.
Got it. Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Feedback.
Yeah. So you are essentially a partner that's just, you're coming in just for a little short season and then you're dipping out. But depending on the kind of structure you have in your business, there's the full like, boom, let's install this, this infrastructure visibility platform or whatever we're calling the system. And then once that's installed, then we can start looking at the individual directors in the company. Let's start off with the founder first, because without the founder doing that work, it's going to be really, really hard for everyone else to get on board, right? Start with the founders. They may have like 8 to 15 executives on the team. Girl, you're going to need a team to help you with this.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Yes.
Right. So it's like start macro and then work micro. And then if the individuals, specifically the CEO, needs further work to become and build out this personal brand. Once the company is sorted, that's where the one-on-one work happens. It doesn't happen first, it happens later. Because you're building that trust with them and that rapport. Jess, you are essential now to that company. They can't live without you, girl.
Yeah, that's a good spot to be in for anybody.
Right. And because you have a big name now, because they've done all that work, people know who this person is and who that company is. This is where word of mouth can benefit you. I've just worked with Jess from Copilot. She's fantastic. This is what all the work that she's done for me.
Yeah.
Copy and pasting that in other parts of the world as well.
Yeah. Totally. It'd be great to have eventually clients outside of the US again, sort of to set the stage for more of a flexible living arrangement, not locked into one city, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the goal, isn't it? To be able to like step out of the US. And the way you can step out of the US is by stepping with your company. Yeah. Sure. So your company is not stuck to just Oregon now. You're going to start local, Jess, and I want you to like spiral out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's a relatively easy thing to do given the network I have from where I've worked before, but that's still pretty domestic. It's still pretty US based. So the international piece would definitely be a stretch goal to aim for in the next couple of years.
Right. Guess what? You can mirror anything that you do for that company. If they have a branch abroad, you're going to want to copy and paste that. Let's do a smaller scale version of what we did here to your office in Mumbai or something, that corporate boundary that they've created and the framework is translated abroad. It's not just something that is for headquarters only.
Yeah.
Right. So you're creating that framework and you're creating that brand guideline outside, but with communications and personal branding as part of the core services that you provide.
Yeah. Agree.
All right. Jess, how are you feeling right now?
Good. Yeah. I mean, inspired. I definitely want to make sure that I'm clear in how I'm communicating what I do. And it takes, unfortunately, I don't sell, water cups. It's a little more complex, right? I have to give it a little bit of room to breathe for someone to understand it. But I know that I want a broader audience to be able to understand it within 30 seconds, right? It shouldn't take long. It shouldn't just be a corporate environment that can make sense of it. So I think thinking about the verbiage is a smart build.
Yeah. Well, earlier on in this show, Jess, you gave me a very quick elevator pitch on who you are and what you do. Let's try that again. Now that we've got a little bit of a reframe on how you can position yourself to these founders of these massive companies. So Jess, 30-second elevator pitch. I'm going to grade you at the end of this. Who are you and what do you do?
All right. I'm Jess Jensen, founder of Copilot Communications. I come from 20 years of digital comms and social media work. And I work with leaders and founders to help.
Yes, I'm dozing off. No, let's start again. I'm dozing off. You're talking about your history. What is the problem that you solve?
Okay, let's try again. So, Jess Jensen, founder of Copilot Communications. I work with senior leaders to bring your humanity to the forefront. We're going to use digital properties like social media to do that. so that you can really build your brand, your business, and leave a legacy.
I'm going to give you an F grade for that one.
Okay, what didn't you like about it?
Right. It was too broad. You mentioned the word humanity, and immediately a lot of these corporate people are going to run away from that word because they don't know how bringing humanity and that side of what you're pitching, how is it going to relate back to their profit margin and themselves as the founder?
Right. How does it help the business?
How does it help the business? How does it help them? You're talking one-to-one with these individuals now, right?
Yeah. I mean, often when I talk about it, I talk about the idea of it opening doors from a business development standpoint, right? Because that's going to drive sales. And if there's a relationship or some sort of a public facing brand that person's developed, it allows those conversations to be so much easier when they're doing a keynote at a conference, in a business meeting. And that's the connection between why we'd spend the time on this and how it grows their business.
Okay, well, let's try something like this, right? I'm Jensen, and as someone who worked with big companies like Nestle and Adidas, I am the co-pilot to your large corporation by bringing out the leader within you with your personal brand intact and installing a visibility system to ensure that your company is known worldwide.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
something like that, because you're talking about yourself. You're using the word co-pilot not as a brand name, but as a thing that you do with the company, right? Because you mentioned that in your website. Yeah. And then you're talking about, well, I'm not talking about digital products and podcasts and blah, blah, blah. Those are tools, communication tools. Yeah. You're fixing their visibility issue right now. And there's founders' lack of visibility.
Right. Yeah.
And how that relates back to the company.
Yeah. I think visibility is probably a good word that I should more, because again, it ties back to whether it's building the brand, business development.
It could be anything. It's fluid. It's fluid. And also it separates you from the work that a public relations agency could be doing as well, because their job is to literally bring visibility. Your job is to ensure that they know what they're saying and how they're presenting themselves. That's very different.
Right. And that's some of the hardest work, is for them to figure out what they want to say.
Right. Exactly. Hello, we're talking to an expert right here.
Yeah.
Jess.
Yeah. That's my favorite part of the whole thing, honestly, is getting to work with them to figure out, like you had asked me earlier, what do you want to stand for?
Right. Yeah. Jess, we are wrapping up the Fairy BOSSmother Show. So what is the biggest realization you had being on this podcast?
I'd say two things. I'd say one, to try to translate my own language even further out of maybe sort of what I've been so trained on, which is kind of corporate speak, into more like everyday, what's in it for me language. And I love the word visibility. I think that's a really good one. And then two, the idea of packaging what I sell, not just as sort of one-on-one communications partnership, but also building systems for companies that maybe don't have an executive comms practice already.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I can see that working in your head right now. So I can see you building that infrastructure right now when you're talking to me. So what is the one thing that you're going to implement immediately?
Well, I can spend some time over the next couple of weeks and edit the language, certainly on my website and my LinkedIn, to kind of reflect both of those things we just talked about. And probably that's the homepage and the services page section. And then again, my bio on LinkedIn needs to obviously be a cascading component of that. So yeah.
Awesome. And do you believe that you can do this on your own, or do you feel like you need more guidance to help you get there with your own personal brand?
I think I can take a stab at this on my own, just given what I do, but it's always good to have outside eyes.
Right. Do you think you can do this in 100 days? Because that's exactly the system that I bring to entrepreneurs on the table.
I think I can, but I'm happy to hear about your system too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Jess, it was fantastic to have you on the Fairy BOSSmother Show. Any last words before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate the time. I appreciate your candor and honesty. And again, it's great to get, a perspective from someone who hasn't walked in the same worlds that I have, because sometimes you forget sort of, you forget the kind of like incestuous kind of world that you live and speak in. And it's good to have someone to sort of hold up a mirror and reflect what's possible. So I appreciate that very much.
Right. I'm going to do this one last time, Jess. Let's get that F grade into slightly higher. Jess, who are you and what do you do?
Okay. All right. So Jess Jensen, founder of Co-Pilot Communications. I partner and co-pilot your communications system for your executives, but I also help bring visibility to all the individual personalities of your leadership.
Why?
To the visibility, it will open doors around new business and also cause your customers and clients to be rooting for you as a company.
Okay, I'm going to give you a D. That's a step up for sure. Keep trying, Jess. Keep trying. You did amazing today. I hope you had a lot of fun on this podcast, and I can't wait to see what you do based on our conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Fairy BOSSmother Show and feel ready to build your $1 million personal brand, download the Personal Brand Starter Kit for just $29 and learn the exact system I use to turn small business owners into $1 million personal brands. Go to brandlikeabosskit.com or snap the QR code on this video. See you soon.